This is the most reliable opening for black. It starts with the move d6 and it's called the Philidor defense. Once I started to play it, my chess rating skyrocketed, I became an international master, and it helped hundreds of my students to finally achieve their chess goals. Next, you play the move knight to f6 and you attack the e4 pawn. Finally, you play the move e5 and you immediately fight for the center. We play against a very strong player, one of our subscribers, almost 2200 rated player, yet this opening is gonna work like magic against him. Of course, I can miserably lose this game and then you're gonna laugh at me, but that's chess, you never know what's gonna happen. So the idea is very simple. Now white has to decide. They can take it over here and go into the endgame, or they are gonna play knight to f3 and play the main line. There is also a very weird move d5 that a lot of players under 2000 elo are making. That doesn't make any sense at all because it doesn't attack the pawn on e5 anymore. Moreover, it's not gonna attack, like it's gonna block the diagonal. They take it on e5. And this is my favorite line. I have the highest win rate in this specific line in this endgame. So that's a very good thing that we are gonna play it, because so many of you are afraid of it. Like, oh my god, the king cannot castle. What am I gonna do? Well, without the queens, there is no danger for the king. The whole point of castling in chess is to make sure that your king is in safety. But without the queens, it's not dangerous. And in fact, the king would be very useful in the center, as you're gonna see later on in the game. I love this opening because it's so simple to play. It never lets you down because you don't care what your opponent is playing. It works against all possible variations. e4, d4, c4, knight f3. You don't care what they are playing. You can use the same setup and it's super reliable. So after bishop g5, I like this move c6. If you want, you can start with knight d7, still works perfectly, but I just want to make sure that this knight never comes forward. The best thing about this opening that it's not about memorizing. So many YouTube gurus are gonna tell you, like, you have to remember this line and then you're gonna play so well. It never works that way. First, you never know what your opponent is gonna do, so you cannot even predict it. Second, even if you get there, you have no idea what to do afterwards. You have no understanding of the right middle game plans. Well, with this opening, you don't have any of those problems. I have an entire playlist on this channel where I cover all possible variations from the opponent, including this endgame, as you can see now. By the way, against the check, just play knight to d7, so that you can prepare against possible different types of situations. And also, I have an entire program, 10-day opening mastery, that is built for busy adults and seniors who want to build the lifetime holistic opening repertoire without wasting hours on memorizing that opening theory they will never face. It's built specifically for you. The link is in the description. Knight f3. Very important not to blunder this pawn on e5. It's like the #1 thing. If you blunder this pawn, the entire opening collapses. Please remember to always keep an eye on it. For example, here it's under attack because he's threatening, he's pinning this knight and threatening to take it with the knight. You have both king to c7 and king to e8. I recommend both moves basically, but king to e8 is a little bit simpler. You don't need to like memorize when you need to go to c7, when you need to go to e8. You just go to e8 every time and it works like magic. Bishop h4 is actually the best move for white because my subscriber is very experienced. I think he kind of knows this variation. It feels like, because otherwise, how on earth do you come up with bishop h4 in the first place? The idea is actually very cool. You spend 2 tempi just to attack this guy on e5. Nevertheless, we are still going ahead with our plan. We place the bishop on c5, put pressure on the f2 pawn. The bishop is very good, another reason why bishop h4 is so great. Yet still, if you continue the plan blindly with bishop g3, after knight g4, you already find yourself in a pretty annoying situation. This f2 pawn would be hanging, you would need to play rook d2, which is not that great, and then we are going to be able to play f6 and defend the entire pawn structure. So it's not easy for white at all to play it. I think after a4 we can still play knight to g4 and go for the same plan, because once we play f6 we like don't have anything to worry about. I think he played it because he wants to stop me from playing b5. Once he plays bishop c4, b5 is our normal plan, the queenside attack, and now it's not possible. Maybe we would renew this threat with the move a6 once he plays bishop c4, but for now I really like this knight g4 idea. Let me check if I have anything better. I can just play king e7, opening up the rook and making sure that the king is very secure here. Yes, there is a pin, but like the entire idea of that move was to play bishop g3, and then there wouldn't be any pin, and I would be able to play knight g4, attack and defend at the same time. Afterwards, the king would be very secure on e7. So that would be an alternative to an immediate knight g4. But like, if I have the opportunity to play it right now, one thing you don't want to blunder is a checkmate over here, like rook d8. Never, if you move this knight, then never move this one, because rook d8 would be checkmate in one. But hopefully you're not gonna do that. And it's also like one move idea. The very next move, we are gonna play f6, and this diagonal is going to be closed. And we can even attack over here. We are like basically potentially stronger on both sides of the board. That would be very cool. Let's see what our opponent does here. It feels like he's doing everything correct so far, like pretty much perfect play, yet still it's very difficult to figure out what to do as white. And this is the beauty of this opening. First, it's incredibly solid and reliable. Second, you know exactly what your plan should be. We normally always attack on the queen side or in the center. If they don't exchange these pawns, now it's not possible. So basically, we always want to attack here, and we make moves on this part of the board to deal with our opponent's threats. Like, I want to secure this pawn. Secondly, we even create some annoying ideas for white. And the advantage of doing it now, that the bishop is still there. So rook f1 is not possible. He has to defend it with the rook to d2, which, well, might be useful at some point, but maybe not the move he wants to make right now. And so that gives us time to stabilize the situation, make sure our pawn structure is solid, and then we don't have any weaknesses. Notice that this knight on c3 is more or less useless because of this c6 pawn. It cannot go forward, it cannot create any dangers for us. And once we play this move f6, I really like it. This knight is basically the same. It cannot create anything. Moreover, this bishop is absolutely useless. Like, just look at it. It cannot create any threats. The only problem might have been if somehow he's able to attack this pawn in a situation where we cannot play f6 yet. But we already did it. Yes, he attacks, but we simply step back, no problems at all. After g4, we can even play g5 and shut it down completely, making sure that this bishop is basically in prison. It cannot do anything. Afterwards, yeah, we are ready to focus on our counterplay, on our ideas. I like the move king to e7 now to make sure that this bishop e7 is not possible, to free our rook. That feels very good. We should be careful at some point not to blunder the pawn on e5. As always, remember just one thing, if you can take it away: never blunder the e5 pawn. It's absolutely essential for the position. But otherwise, the king on e7 is great because, yeah, thanks to this c6 pawn, there is no knight d5. Knight d5 will just kill us on the spot. But of course, we make this key move and then it's never possible. And yeah, we can come back to our typical plan with a6 and b5. That would give us the counterplay that we really need so much. We want to be active, we want to create threats for the opponent, but at the same time, it gives us space to continue our development, to go forward. Let's see how it goes. I like that my opponent is taking time. Most of the players I play against, lower rated ones, they are playing so fast in the first stage of the game. I have no idea why. Then they get into a completely horrible position and then they start to think, but it doesn't make any sense. Think while it still matters. Think while the position is still good for you. Okay, that is very good. He basically has developed all of his pieces and we haven't developed 3 of our pieces, which is usually not that great. But our position is very solid and maybe a weird feeling for you, but this king is actually hugely important. If it would be there in the corner somewhere, that's not gonna help us in the defense. It's not gonna help us to cover all of those squares. So remember this, the king is very good in the center once there are no queens on the board, if it cannot be easily attacked. I mean, if that E file would be opened, of course, the king might have been in trouble. But if it's not possible to attack it, like no ideas like that is possible, it's actually very useful here. And now let's go ahead with A6. We, of course, should be careful with threats, but it's protected twice. I don't see any ideas here. Yes, you can sacrifice and then play knight e5, but I don't see the point. We can even continue with bishop e6. Everything is solid. We have an extra exchange. That cannot be bad. Otherwise, we create the threat of b5. Remember, once they take, we never ever take it with this pawn, making d5 square available to them. We always take back with a pawn, and that is actually great. We even potentially create some checkmating ideas with our rook, activating it without making a single move. If they don't take, however, then they still have to go backwards. We can continue with b4. We can at some point play bishop b4, and the spin would be annoying, freeing the c5 square for the knight. So I want to share these key ideas with you so that you can use it in your own games. And it's essential that you don't need to memorize it. I don't remember that it's like on move 10 in this line I have to play a b5, and in the other position I don't have to play it. No, this opening is based on typical ideas. That's why I love it so much. Forget memorizing openings. Focus on understanding the key ideas. So I know that this must be my plan. Doesn't matter which variation, like I see this position for the first time in my entire life, I think. But I still know that this is supposed to be my plan. One example of a blunder of this key pawn would have been, instead of a6, to go rook to d8. Because then I would pin myself, this knight cannot move anymore, this pawn is also pinned, so knight takes e5 would have been possible, and after knight takes, rook takes d8, again, everything collapses. Even though I actually take the bishop, maybe it's not that bad as I think, but still, we don't need such weird traps because we are still pinning ourselves, this knight still cannot go anywhere. Instead, I want to play b5, maybe bishop b4, knight c5, bishop e6, then I'm going to connect all of the rooks. And notice, white has no idea how to continue. Like up to here, his moves were pretty easy, right? He developed his pieces, and then he's sitting there thinking like, oh my god, but what do I do next? I don't have a single penetration square. I don't have a single thread that I can create. So how do I take advantage of my development here, of my control of the open file? There is no way, at least I don't see it. He can play g4. That is an interesting idea to, create some weaknesses. But I can just answer with g5. There is nothing you can do. You also save a tremendous amount of time, and time is essential in chess. Like, you know what to do in the opening. You know your middle game plan, so that also is faster for you to understand, and you save so much time for later stages of the game, for some crazy tactics that are gonna appear once the position complicates, or to convert your advantage in the endgame, which I hope you inevitably get thanks to this opening. Alright, he does go for g4. I think g5 is a very cool move. Why not just stop it? First of all, it's a move with the tempo, so he has to go backwards. Secondly, this bishop on g3 is absolutely useless so far. We don't have the problem of the e5 pawn anymore, so this knight can potentially move, like, I don't know, to b6 if we need that. The only thing we need to be careful with, we always think about the opponent's ideas, is the move h4 later on. Wait a second, I blundered! Wow! The moment I thought about it, because I was like, why do you play bishop g3? I realized that, yeah, there is a capture. I'm not sure it's that easy for him. Maybe we can still create some threads, starting with the move b5, but yeah, that is one thing you never want to do. Before, doesn't matter how great your move seems to be, before you make it, always think about your opponent's opportunities. And the number one thing that you want to do, and this is the mistake I did, whenever you push any of your pieces or pawns, just check whether it can be captured. I automatically assumed it cannot and he has to go backwards, but that is actually a huge mistake that so many players, you see, including me, can sometimes make. Just check it, whether it's possible to take, even if it seems like it's protected like here. But yeah, I forgot about the knight on h6, which is going to be vulnerable there, and I'm going to be down 2 pawns. So that means I should have just ignored it probably, because yeah, there is no big danger. In every case, I can start with b5 attacking this guy. That was so stupid. But okay, let's play b5 anyway. We want to create threats. Even if you are worse in the position, even if something goes wrong, you still want to be active. In fact, that's the best thing you can do. Create some difficulties for the opponent. So we are a pawn down. Let's see what kind of threats he creates. Yeah, with this knight, I don't like that those light squares are now. Like the whole point, remember when I played f6, the whole point was to limit this knight's potential so it can never go forward. And yet now it's there because of my stupid move. Horrible. And I cannot play knight f7 anymore. Maybe what I should have played instead of b5, well, b5 has to be the best, but I also had this interesting idea, knight b6, with the tempo opening up my bishop, and then maybe knight takes g4, so that that knight is not hanging anymore, and the pawn is still vulnerable. Okay, how to continue from here? I have still like a tempo or two, because this knight is weirdly placed there, a bit vulnerable, so maybe I can use that time to like create a threat. For example, b4. If he goes to knight to e2 with the knight, and I have bishop takes f2, attacking this guy, and if he takes, I take my pawn back. Although I'm still not happy about that, because then I'm gonna have those weaknesses. That's the opposite of what I wanted to get. Okay, let me stay, even though I'm a pawn down, still go for my strategy to be consistent here, to play positionally. For example, you might be thinking about bishop d4, but I don't like it, as after knight e2 the bishop is hanging again. Maybe I can play c5, but I never want to touch this pawn, because then the d5 square is available. He can either come back here or play bishop d5. In every case, I don't like it. But bishop b4 feels to be interesting, because I pin that guy, and I want to play knight c5 next. Knight a6, I hope, is not really great, because this knight is going to be vulnerable. I can play knight b6 and attack it twice. If he just comes back, yeah, then still there is this annoying pin there. I wanted to play knight c5, but now I see there is knight e5 again. I just say it, I don't need to worry about it anymore. And here I am worrying about it. Knight b6 here. It does secure those squares. It probably goes back, yeah, and then the thing that I don't like is that this pawn is hanging. Okay, let me take a look at this move again. Yeah, then the problem is he's gonna play c3, right, and just push me back. I like bishop b4 because it's pinning him. Knight g4 takes, pawn takes, bishop takes. I'm still a pawn down, right? So that doesn't bring me anything. And it frees up, like makes this bishop a monster. Yeah, g4, g5 move was crazy wrong. But that's life. Sometimes you make mistakes. Let's try to get out of it. Bishop b4. Knight to f3. I mean, knight of f3 doesn't need to be that dangerous, right? What kind of threats he creates? Knight f7 would be a desirable move, but unfortunately he can just take and then take here. And otherwise he wants to play g5 still. g5 is annoying. What do I do? How do I survive here? This bishop is also suddenly so strong. There is another way for this knight to be developed, now that I think about it. Knight to f8 and knight to g6. The knight would be attacking the bishop and defending the pawn at the same time. And then I'm free to play bishop e6, and I solve the g5 problem. I like it a lot. Let me see the tactics. This is covered. Yeah, I think that works. I think this is the best chance for us to continue the fight. I never want to resign. Like I won in my life so many games that were like totally lost. This is not even close to totally lost. It's still very complicated. Yes, white is definitely better thanks to the extra pawn. But yeah, let's see whether our very strong opponent can defeat us. But knight f8 feels to be a good fighting chance, because I solved that problem. I open up the bishop, so I control those squares, and at the same time, my opponent played f3 and immediately... he mouse slipped, okay. Immediately proposed to take back. Let us do that to see what his idea is. Okay, yeah, knight f3 is a very reasonable move. And now knight g6, because otherwise this is hanging, like, we cannot tolerate it. Still, this g5, well, without the bishop it cannot be that dangerous, right? Can he play g5 now? We take, attack in there, probably not. So he goes back. And now g5 without the bishop is not that dangerous. And also that makes this bishop stronger. But maybe it's still annoying. Now we do have knight f7. The move I wanted to play for a long time, because if he takes, well, no problems. There is no knight on d7 hanging anymore, so we can just take it and enjoy our two bishops advantage. I love it. In addition, it helps me to stop the g5 move, right? Because if he does it, I have enough protectors for the e5 pawn, so I can just take it, and the h3 pawn would be hanging. So I might even threaten right now to provoke it by playing h5. Because notice that all of his rooks are there, and my rook is here. And by playing h5, I basically develop it without making a move, which is very cool. And at the same time, I create a threat. Like, I basically just attack this pawn. That's very interesting. I think I have found a very cool solution, practical solution, how to get away from troubles. I still feel he must be better here thanks to an extra pawn, but it's not simple. Like, our main goal in chess is to make life tough for our opponent. Doesn't matter if we are better or we are worse. It's still essential to create counterplay, to create threats for the opponent. So he constantly feels pressure. For example, here, first, it's difficult for him because he doesn't know what the plan should be. Like, this knight is not going anywhere, this knight is not going anywhere, this bishop is not going anywhere. Those rooks feel to be active, yet they cannot go anywhere. Like, it's not easy to find a move for me. For white here. Yes, he can always take, but I don't see it helps a lot. Even if you play g5 afterwards, it doesn't create any threats. You take, I take it back with the king. And in the meantime, I'm gonna grab your pawn. He can maybe play rook to d8, but that is also never a problem. I can just play bishop e6, connecting my rooks, and there is no pin. Maybe knight h4 is a move he should be making, because he wants to go here, which is very active. The knight on f5 is really strong. And if I take it, then he gets back to h4. But that, again, doesn't create any threats. Okay, he takes. I think, yes, he follows the logic that he's a pawn up, so he should exchange the pieces. That is very logical. At the same time, that's quite a concession in terms of giving up the bishop for a knight. And remember, those knights are really not active. The only active thing he can do is g5, and that is the move I should be careful with. But otherwise, I think I'm in good shape here. g5, like I said, is not a big threat. I'm going to take it. So in the meantime, I'm going to be able to grab a pawn, which means I'm going to just play bishop e6. I don't want to take. Then he would be able to at least exchange all of the rooks, and this is very annoying. To say the least, he's actually even pinning me. But instead, bishop e6 feels very logical. And now I'm attacking him twice, so I assume he went here just to exchange. But that doesn't scare me that much. His rooks were more active than mine. And now my bishop is really active here. I also don't mind going that he took this rook and not this one, because remember, my idea is to play h5. I actually expected him to take there. This rook might be very active if he takes, but if he doesn't, like, what it's doing on a8, basically nothing. And it's not a good strategy for you to stay there and hope for your opponent to take, and then your rook would become stronger. Okay, very fascinating game. I don't think the life got easier for my opponent. Yes, he exchanged a bunch of pieces, but the problem is the same. He is left with all of the passive pieces that are basically going nowhere. This rook is good, yes, it's controlling the open file, but also doing nothing. Like, there are no threats it creates. And I have stopped all of his attacking chances. g5 is not doing much. Otherwise, I don't see a single active move for him. And that is a bad sign. Normally, if you give him like 5 moves for white here, how do you even improve the position? Maybe still the same knight h4 idea is the only active move. But I don't think it helps him much. I think I should just take and still play h5, threatening here as well as the bishop. So it feels logical to play g5, but then I just exchange it and win the pawn. Or that pawn is also hanging. Yes, he goes for it. I can win both of them. I think I get the idea now. And I like it. Wait, it doesn't work. I thought the idea is to play f3, and then it feels like everything is great for him, but I can just take and attack the bishop, so it doesn't work. Then I don't like his idea that much. Well, I have to take, because if he plays knight f5, that's a good step forward for him. That knight was doing absolutely nothing. This knight is super strong. You don't want to allow your opponent that. But what about this move h5? I don't think you have a way to save the pawn. Because even if you defend it, I still take it, and the main problem is this bishop is always hanging. So this is a huge threat. I mean, you can take it yourself, but also doesn't help. I just take it, attack the bishop, attack the pawn behind that, and to say the least, I win the pawn back, and I have a pair of bishops. A pair of bishops is always stronger if the position is opened, and if there are still pawns on both sides of the board. If there would be pawns only here, then suddenly the knight is becoming stronger, because it's more flexible on small parts of the chessboard. But it cannot go to both sides of the boards immediately and control the squares in both sides immediately. That is why it's not that great if there are pawns still on both sides. Yet I still think that he should stake. That at least decreases the amount of pawns, the amount of weaknesses he has, and so it's going to be simpler for him afterwards. If he plays g5, however, then I'm gonna have an outside passer here along the h file. And while that might not be that easy for me to promote it, that is a constant problem for him that he has to be careful with, and you never want to do that voluntarily. Let's see what he does. Maybe he blundered, maybe he wanted to play f3 and that was his entire plan. If that would be possible, that would help a lot. But yeah, there is no way. This is so weak. The more vulnerable pieces you have in your camp, the higher the chances that you're going to miss something, blunder something, or just the tactics are not going to work your way. So be very careful with the unprotected pieces that you have. Yeah, he takes. Very, very strong opponent. I'm happy we are getting such an opponent, because if this opening works against such a strong guy, imagine what you are gonna do on your level with such a strong weapon. I actually used it against super grandmasters, against Hikaru Nakamura, and it worked really great. Even I beat the world number 13 back at the time when we played the game, Linear Dominguez, super grandmaster. I just crushed him with this exact opening. The video is also in the playlist. Okay, now he takes on b5. Even here, we still never take with the c-pawn, not allowing that knight to go there. Why would we do that? Yes, so this c6 pawn is our base pawn, so that is the only potential weakness we might have, but it's like almost impossible to attack. You cannot even go here because we control that square. The question is, can we win this game? The pawns are equal. This bishop is still passive, whereas we have a pair of bishops. We are attacking, so our position is definitely better now. But better and winning is two completely different things. Let's think about it. If he goes to d8, trying to make his rook more active, I don't know, to go somewhere here. Even that is not that dangerous, but that creates some weaknesses in his camp too, and maybe we can try to explore it. What else can he do? Knight e2 doesn't help, you still have 0 score. Like, this knight is one of the biggest reasons why this opening is so cool for black, because it never has anything to do. And people at your level first never understand it. Once they do, sooner or later, because they don't have any other pieces and they are like, what to do with this knight? There is nothing you can do with it, as long as you keep the pawn on c6. So please push the pawn to c6. Remember, I did it as early as possible just to make sure that knight d5 is never possible. And then this knight was always stuck. Our opponent has some time difficulties. We do have increment, so yeah, finally he makes a move. Rook to d3. Yeah, just trying to hold on, basically. He understands that his position is worse, but he doesn't want to create any unnecessary weaknesses, wants to stabilize everything. Okay, no threats that he created. Bishop c4, if you think, well, it's double-edged move because he can go here. Maybe to start, I just want to bring my king closer to the center, controlling all of those squares, so the rook is not dangerous. Very important. I have to be careful with the dark squares. I mean, no discover checks, losing my rook or something. But again, whenever it's protected, I cannot actually lose it, right? So it helps a lot. I like the move king e3. The principle that you should follow in such an endgame is do not hurry. You don't need to go forward and try to destroy your opponent immediately. His position is pretty solid. You are better, so your task is slowly but surely improve your position. 3 things that are so important in the endgame and you should focus on it. And then try to apply more and more pressure on the opponent until he cannot handle it. So 3 things: the pieces activity. Try to make every single one of your pieces as active, as useful as possible. The king's activity, well, in this case, I still cannot go really forward with my king. It's too early for that, but at least it's much more useful than my opponent's king. And finally, the passers. Whether you have the passers, if not, whether you can create it, and if you have it, whether you can push it forward. The same 3 things, it's very important to keep an eye not only on yourself, but also on your opponent. Right now, I don't have any passers. I would be happy to create it, but it's not that simple. I think it's time for me to give a check, see what the king is doing, because if it goes here with an idea to be more safe, I think it's a big mistake. I'm going to play bishop to d4, and this is a horrible pin. Moreover, this pawn is going to be in trouble. So he plays that instead, which is more logical. But still, the king is not totally safe. Like, I can play bishop to g4. Maybe he wants to play f3. But that creates more weaknesses in his camp. Now, this is all not a problem. My king is controlling everything. If he plays f4, maybe that is his idea, to make this bishop more active. That makes sense. Maybe I just play rook g1. If his ideas are that and that, rook g1 kind of stops it. It's like a prophylaxis. And then I have the potential to go here. I still control everything. Yes, I give him this h4 square. The question is, can he actually do something about it? Bishop g4, well, maybe he has rook g3 additional opportunity. Maybe not, I have bishop takes f2. Rook g4, yeah, it doesn't work for us. We have to be careful with tactics there. So bishop g4 allows f3, rook to g1 allows bishop h4. Which is more relevant. I think bishop h4 is not such a big deal. So I'm going to play rook g1. I can also at some point play bishop b4 and just say, this pin is very annoying for you, what are you going to do about it? Scare him. Sometimes you just want to put pressure on the opponent, like this threat is stronger than the execution. Okay, he goes knight e2. Yeah, that is another reasonable move, just to attack my rook. But my whole point was to go to g2 anyway. Let me make sure I don't blunder it. But like, to blunder it, he has to attack it. Yes, he can attack it with the king. Even there I have bishop h3. Wait, but I can attack it from f1 now. I didn't play rook f1 before because of king e2. But now he blocked that square, so I can play rook f1. And yeah, I want to attack his weaknesses. I want to put pressure on it. f4, okay. Yeah, f4 makes sense, actually. Check into e3. Just repeats the position. Like, I basically provoke him to play c3. And then this pawn would be vulnerable. And if he goes b4, then this square would be vulnerable, which is good for me. And if he repeats, yeah, I think it's a good practical move. Like, basically, you see what your opponent is doing. And yeah, he got for it. I don't think it's a good thing to do. Because, well, I wanted to go back anyway. Maybe that was his idea, that he wants to take on c5 and he doesn't want to give me another chance. But I don't mind playing that. Now I have to decide whether I take with the bishop or with the pawn. In terms of saving a pair of bishops, it's better to take with the pawn. The bishop becomes a little bit more active, but maybe not much. Just king d7, and I don't see any threats. Otherwise, the pawn is hanging, and I keep my two bishops. I can then come here, play bishop c5, bishop g4, bishop c4, depending on what he does. That's interesting. Otherwise, I can take with the bishop. If takes, pawn takes. Yeah, but then I reduce the amount of material. I don't want to exchange the material that easily because it gives my opponent additional chances. I actually like what he's doing. Like, it's very good for him to exchange those pawns, but I don't think I could have stopped it. He's doing the right thing. Still, there are some problems to solve. First of all, with that pawn. And if he plays b4, yeah, basically bishop c4 is very annoying. If he plays that immediately, he wants to play knight to f5. But what about rook f4? That attacks here, controls that square, and keeps an eye on that pawn. And remember, this pawn is hanging. So I think rook f4 is very good. Knight f5 is like absolutely impossible because I take and then I take the bishop. So you see that the more threats you create in your opponent's camp, the more difficult it becomes for him to deal with all of it. Bishop g5, I think just rook g4, right? Still knight f5 is not possible, and still bishop b3 is coming. Yeah, but he creates a counter threat. And it works. If I take, he takes back, and there is no tactics in there. So I have to deal with that problem by playing king c7. Yeah, somehow he gets out of trouble. Maybe that was the wrong thing to do. Maybe I should have just stepped somewhere with my rook, not allowing this. But okay, I always have rook g6 attacking it again. So let me play king c7 for now. See what he does. Maybe knight f5 now is possible, but I can take it and play rook f4 afterwards. And then I don't see any way for you to defend the pawn. Otherwise, you're just losing it. And of course, it's still not easy to win, but it's a very good chance. Extra pawn we put, like practically it would be very difficult. Okay, he protects the pawn, doesn't want to give me this c4 square, which makes sense. But on the other hand, once I go here with the check, that would be really bad for him. So this knight basically cannot move now. Also, in terms of that check that I just mentioned, what about rook f4? Going back now, attacking the bishop again, and threatening rook f2. Earlier, it wasn't that great because that king could have attacked me somehow. But now it's away, so it cannot attack me that easily. Bishop d8 check, the most active move. I like it. And yeah, he did it in a situation where my rook is no longer on the g file attacking his knight. Very smart, very resourceful. I like it a lot. But I think I can just come back. And then he's going to b6. Covering this square. Wow, that's very cool. And threatening bishop c5. Yeah, that's really cool move. Okay, can I take? Takes, king e7, takes, check. I win the pawn back. But then this knight f5 is annoying. Maybe rook g4 instead? Attacking it, because the rook is here, so it cannot come back to defend. So he has to go away, and then I can grab a pawn. I think that should be good. Again, not saying that I'm gonna win it, but it's about where you have the biggest practical chance. Yeah, this bishop d8, I think I shouldn't have allowed it. The alternative is bishop d7, keeping the pawn, and then playing king c7 or king e7 next. That might be interesting. I thought knight f5 is a problem, but his pawn is still hanging, right? Yeah, the problem is he's coming back, then his rook is pretty active. Still, that check would be annoying. Well, if I play king e7 takes and rook g4, he can have knight f5 check, which I completely forgot about. Then it doesn't work. Then I should go for this. I also keep more pawns on the board. Remember what I have told you, if there are pawns only on one part of the board, then the knight is suddenly much stronger. Unfortunately, those pawns got off, so we only have this, which makes the bishop at least a little bit more active, especially since it's a light square pawn. But the more pawns goes off, the stronger the knight becomes. b4 is a very double-edged move. On the other hand, on the one hand, it's active, it's going forward, but on the other hand, the more pawns you place on the light squares, the weaker they are against the bishop. Okay, but first of all, can I just attack? This is the move I really wanted to make. Because I don't want, if I play that, then he goes here. Do I take first? Because otherwise he can take himself. Yeah, probably. Actually, don't want to play that. No, I'm gonna play b4. I think this is the best chance for me to play for a win, to keep as many pawns as possible and to keep it on the light squares. And yes, he can play rook g6, but okay. Maybe after rook g6, even rook g4, exchanging the rooks is interesting. Okay, he goes backwards. But that's a relief for me. Now I can improve my position, because this knight still is not moving anywhere. I think his position is really tough now. Maybe king e7 was better. I don't know, hard to say. I didn't like this knight f5 idea, but on the other hand, the king is more active, controlling more squares. Anyway, I think this is good. Now this bishop is coming to g4, controlling even more squares. Rook f2 check at some point might be annoying. And maybe rook f3, like I said before, just exchanging those rooks. I have to think about it, whether it's enough for a win or not. I think first I want to improve my position to the maximum ability. So let me play king d6, and maybe even king c5. I hope I'm not checkmated there. Okay, he goes for the exchange. Here. I mean, that feels very suspicious. I think it's close to winning. I can also exchange the rooks. I have no idea what is better to exchange. I really like to exchange this, because he's super passive now. Yes, rook's endgame is always a good chance for a draw, but I like this pawn structure. He constantly has this weakness, and I just need to attack it somehow. Ah, but he goes here. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have exchanged. My bishop was definitely stronger. I thought it's enough, because I always want to go here. But if I can't, that would be a pity. Okay, he's going backwards, which is kind of a surprise. What do I do? Do I go here or here? He's gonna play rook d3, and what do I do next? Not clear. Maybe rook c1. Then he comes to d2. Okay, let me play that first. I think this move is more tricky. Rook d3, I have a check, and he cannot go there, because I can exchange the rooks. I say that, and now I'm thinking, I'm not sure that's winning. That's winning if I can get to d4, but it doesn't seem I can. Yeah, he goes for it. Yet, still, let's make this check, because he has to make a choice now. Yeah, I shouldn't have exchanged. I think that gives him a much better chance for a draw, but it's still complicated, crazy complicated. Like, there are some pawn endgames possible here after, like, king e3, rook c2. I just want to play rook c3. Okay, he doesn't allow me that. But that is also almost feels like he has 0 moves to go. Like, if he plays here, I have rook e2. And I'm just winning the pawn. But if he doesn't, then what do? If you go here with the rook, I go ahead and I just win. If you go here with the rook, then I win the pawn. It's basically a zugzwang. King d1 wasn't the right choice, I think. Yeah, now I win the pawn. He cannot stay on this file, otherwise rook d4 is winning. Or, okay, like that. How do we win now? Probably we still go ahead, so that we again cut him and he has to go backwards. Maybe even rook b2, so that, yeah, he goes here and the king is less active. And then finally I go away, and now I'm ready with e4. Because once I push my king to the c3, it's going to be a checkmate. Okay. So e4, time for it. And now I can go back to b2 and actually win that pawn. He's gonna attack my pawn, king d4, check, and I get to c3. I think it's very good. Should be winning. In such a position, you don't even need to think that much, whether it's objectively winning or not. Who cares? Your job is just to make the best moves, create as many problems for the opponent as possible, and if you win, you win. If not, not. As simple as that. I actually like both moves. I'm not even sure which one is better. I'm okay losing that pawn. I'm gonna have these two passers. Probably, I mean, king c3 feels a little bit more logical, so I'm gonna play it. I think both are winning. Should be winning. Yeah. c5 doesn't make any difference? Probably not. Let's just take. And our pawn must be, in every case, much faster than this. And also, this is like a shield. Like it's not possible to give any checks because of this pawn. Yeah. Wait. This is still not simple because he's threatening to promote there with a check. That would be very dangerous. Like, I don't know, rook c1, c6, b1, takes, and then he plays c7, and I have no way to stop the pawn. So I have to be careful with it. But thank God I can just, I don't know, go here, c6. I even have rook a3. Ah, no, I don't, because it's a check, okay? Don't make such stupid things. c6, I can just play king c2. And then c7, I can just promote. Yeah, that seems to work. Again, it's very important that he doesn't have any checks, right? Wait, c6? Maybe I have to be a little bit more careful and not allow c7 and play rook here, because if rook b7, I can just take. And otherwise, I want to play king, because if I play king c2, he plays c7. If I play that, he plays rook b8. And then still that should be winning, b1. He takes, check. I mean, it has to be winning, although I still need to be a little bit careful. Whereas if I play rook h7, rook b7 is absolutely not possible. I just take it and promote first. Otherwise, he can go there and start giving some annoying checks. Maybe not, because he goes here, I just play that. Yeah, I think rook h7 is the simplest. He can go back, but that's always not active enough. Yeah, here, king c2. Oh, wait. I have to be careful, because he takes and plays king d5, and then it's a draw. But I have rook e7. Just protecting it first, like there is no way for him to stop me from king c2. Apart from rook b5. Rook b5, did I spoil it? I don't know, it feels... Maybe I should have went for that king c2 move. It wasn't simple, but it was winning. And now... Well, this check is still not great for him. I play king b4. Okay, let me play rook c7 and see what happens. But after rook b6, he's still threatening to take and go there. Yeah, I think I did the wrong thing. Rook endgames are crazy complicated. Now he's just threatening to take. King c2, he would take, b1, takes, and king d5, and that's a draw. Wow, I thought like this is easily winning, and then somehow I got myself into this position, which I'm not sure I'm winning. What about rook to e6? I don't know. I don't have any time, but I want to try it. c7, I have rook c6. That feels good. Rook c5, I have king b4. And then I'm the first one to promote. That also feels good. So probably he has to go backwards. But then I don't see a way, because if I play king c2, he plays c7. That actually might be interesting. Because then if he plays c7, it feels like the pawn is much stronger, but actually it's going to be further away from the king, and maybe I would be in time to pick it up. The problem is I can never sacrifice my rook, because he always takes back with the check. Okay, he actually goes for that. I don't have any choice, I have to play this. Okay, I thought it's not possible, because if I'm the first one to promote, like, okay, if I take, he has a check, and that is not winning. But I definitely want to promote. That must be a checkmate, doesn't it? Okay, that. In here, queen f3, king g5. Still not easy. Wait, I have that. And then I take, but he takes my rook. Yeah, I have 5 seconds, so I have to be fast. I hope there is not a big... Wait, that is a checkmate. Wow, that was crazy complicated. Let's take a look at the analysis so we see what actually happened here. It was indeed winning the entire time, this endgame in the end, so I was worried too much, but still I think I gave him too many practical chances here. So that's... Yeah, rook c5 was the simplest, but I'm curious how I'm supposed to win a rook e5. Yeah, so the same idea. I just want to get to the c file and be behind the pawn. It's always the best strategy to be behind the pawn. And afterwards, it's super easy. Black is just winning. In this playlist, you can learn so much more about this amazing opening, how to beat absolutely everyone, thanks to just one easy opening. 10-day opening mastery. Right now you get 4 live sessions with me personally, completely for free. It's included in the course. The link is in the description.